Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. As part of our how-to series, we're going to look at how to deal with a mind-body profile in which attending to the symptoms has become a major factor preventing you from getting better. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I'll get back to you personally. And finally, the website www.crushingdoubt.org is up and running, and you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or get any of my PDFs on the site. There are a number of basic profiles in mind-body experience, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I'll give you kind of some general ones to understand and know about. This follows the columns, of course. In the emotions column, we've got acute-driven symptoms that come up with the onset and uptick in symptoms. Also in the emotions column, there's a kind of trauma acceptance profile, I would say, where you know about your different columns, but there's a kind of more major trauma or something that you're not incorporating so much. When it comes to doubt, we've got the chronic doubt-driven profile that's pretty typical in my experience working with people. We also have doubt that comes up in relation to triggers, and sometimes that can be in relation to a blunt force collision or accident that was the initial trigger, or it can just be triggered experience in general. When it comes to the power column, we have plateaus and stubborn symptoms that relate to power and also personality characteristics. So doubt about the self, that third level doubt, this is part of what comes up when it comes to this kind of profile. There's also a kind of profile where you get confused because you're kind of getting it from all different columns. And so that needs to be sorted out, and that's another reason my system can work so well. But there's another profile that doesn't as easily fit into these different columns. When you look at it, you'll see how it can be used with the columns, but it kind of has a diffuse way of showing itself, and it runs across the columns. And that relates to attentional issues. So when I had Dan Buglio on for an interview, he talked about fear and attention as the two main reasons that conditions remain chronic. And I think he's really onto something. I think those are two of the absolute biggest factors. The only one that I would add really is the power dynamics to the mix, and that's something that I might know more about as a psychologist, but that's one of the reasons I've developed that column. But either way, even though Dan Buglio talks about this quite a bit, and I'm glad he does, and he does a good job of it, attentional issues are not discussed well enough in the field of mind-body work, just in general, and I even include myself in that. It's something that people often ask questions about. How do I do this? So that's why I'm doing this video. So attentional issues are what occurs when you already have the mind-body information, but you find yourself unable to stop focusing on that part of the body or that worry about the body. Again, you can have attentional issues even while you didn't understand mind-body issues. When I had back pain, I would go to sleep at night thinking about my back. I would wake up in the morning thinking about my back. That was attentional issues for sure, but it wasn't the primary issue. It can become the primary issue or can be identified as the primary issue when the columns are more resolved. So let's talk about what you can do about, if we're talking in TMS language, like Sarno did, tension myositis syndrome, we can call it attentional TMS or attentional mind-body issues, whatever we want to call it. So the first step in dealing with attentional TMS or mind-body issues is to make sure you're at a good place with all of your columns. If you're not at a good place with all of your columns, if they're still active, then whatever's going on in those columns is actually going to be the more primary factor. The attentional side of things is certainly annoying, and it does contribute to the problem quite a bit, but it is not the primary factor if you still have work to do in those columns. However, even if the columns are still active, you feeling stuck attending to the symptoms is going to bolster the column you're struggling with. So I want to take a look at attentional issues in mind-body symptoms through the lens of the three columns, because that's the first thing we're going to do with it. So how does it relate to the emotions column? When it comes to attentional issues in the emotions column, it truly is functioning as a distraction. I've talked about this before. The distraction side of things fits in the emotions column. The communication side fits in the power column. And of course, doubt is the cement that holds it all together and makes it go. But when it comes to attentional issues, as you're thinking about it from the emotions column side, it's a very powerful distraction. When you can't stop thinking about a symptom, you're not going to be able to think about your emotional themes. One of the ways that you counter this is to think of your body as a flowing emotion. These are, things I've talked about before, but I'm telling you how to apply them specifically. Your body is a flowing emotion. What does that mean? It means that you're thinking not physically anymore. You're thinking of yourself as emotional and also as moment to moment. Moment to moment thinking is crucial here as well. Between that and thinking emotionally, you can often get attention. You can get your attention off of attention. You won't be stuck attending to the symptom if you're not thinking of it physically. That's how it relates to the emotions column. You may have other emotion column work to do before you can get to the attention side of things, but that is what to do about the attentional aspect of mind-body experience when it comes to the emotions column. Now, how does it relate to the doubt column? When attending to the symptoms, we're generally focused on how uncomfortable they are. Of course, these symptoms are extremely uncomfortable. But what it means is we are thinking physically. So if you're focused on how uncomfortable the symptom is, I don't blame you, not one bit. But you're entering into a doubt sphere because you are thinking of it physically. In fact, one thing you can do that can get attentional issues in the doubt column resolved is to catch yourself visualizing what is going on. A lot of times we do have a visualization that is cementing the process. One example that I had, I felt that there was like a rusty nail in my lower back. That was my visualization, and it was very hard to stop focusing on it when I was envisioning that, because it was like I was walking around and I had that nail with me, even though it wasn't real, quote unquote. It was unfolding in real physiology with those pain receptors firing, with inflammation, with swelling. There were real physical things. There was obviously no actual rusty nail, but that visualization got me stuck attending to it. So you need to recognize that visualization is not reality. Here's another thing that happens with attentional issues with respect to doubt. You also begin to have doubts about your own ability to break free of that obsessive thinking about it. You start to have doubts about how you can think differently, or even if you can think differently. But you can break that doubt if you know that there actually is an answer. And this is where the power column comes in as the best solution to attentional mind-body issues. So how does it relate to the power column? Well, what attentional issues are is a combination of fear, which we know is the emotional form of doubt, and self-consciousness. Self-consciousness is a form of a lack of power because it doesn't feel good to be self-conscious. Nobody likes it. Nobody feels powerful when they're self-conscious. And here's the thing. People with greater tendencies towards fear have this attentional profile much more often. But so do people with higher than usual levels of self-consciousness. That's a power column dynamic. Goodists tend to be somewhat self-conscious, at least somewhat self-conscious, because think about it. They're always wanting to keep a clear view out on the horizon, looking for ways that they may disappoint someone or ways that they need to be attending to someone. So self-consciousness is almost built into their DNA. But as a result, that means they have lower power and more of a likelihood towards attentional mind-body issues. So this is actually a clue with respect to what to do about attentional issues. The fact that people who are attending to these things so closely tend to have more fear and more self-consciousness speaks to the fact that they're going to have stronger doubt columns and a stronger power column when it comes to what's causing the problems. So let's remember, I say this a lot, but it's very important with respect to goodists, that being a goodist does not have to run counter to being powerful. Not at all. In fact, you can if you become powerful, when you become powerful is a better way of saying it, you can use that goodism for good. But goodists do by nature shy away from power. And so this is why as I studied it, as I thought about what does it mean that attentional mind-body issues get resolved by power, which I have found to be true when I assert my own power, attentional issues tend to go down. Well, it speaks to the fact that it must be part of the source. It wouldn't be getting better if addressing that didn't help. So I actually remember having lots of dreams where I had power restriction of some kind. I wasn't able to fight back, or I wasn't able to pursue what I wanted. I don't have that anymore. Now my dreams kind of roam free now that I'm more powerful in my own life and willing to do that and feel comfortable with it. So addressing power column issues becomes very important for taking us away from that obsessive side. This also makes sense when you think about it. When we think about the emotions column and obsessive thinking about the symptom being a distraction, what's going to be the antidote? Using the communication side of things. So of course the power column is the main answer here. When we create our core narrative, we accept our trauma more fully. And this ends one of the restrictions on power, because that restriction was here to prevent acceptance. But we also root ourselves in our identity. Suddenly, the way we're living is much more about who we are than it is about what symptom we're having. And you can already hear how you would start to drift away from attending to the symptom when really you're starting to think about you. Who am I? What do I want? This all frees us up from thinking of ourselves as being at the mercy of the rest of the world, and instead thinking about how can I enact what I need and what I want on the rest of the world. Now we have direction. We have agency, and we have a purpose. I'm not saying this is so easy to get to right away, but if you work on your power column, you get direction, agency, and purpose. And we've also gained an ability to trust ourselves. All of these things are relaxing things, and they make it so that we don't have to attend to the danger as much anymore. Now we can be fiercely in our own corner, and we're aligned with ourselves. So this is why the power column starts to move us in the direction away from attentional issues. Now, I want to make a distinction between self-awareness and self-consciousness. They're not at all the same thing, even if they run close together. Here's the difference. Self-awareness is obviously good and self-consciousness is bad. We know that. But the difference is self-awareness is good because we can just know it and trust it. We don't have to do anything with it. Self-consciousness is bad because it's a sense of danger and something we have to do something about. Self-awareness brings about the parasympathetic response. We're relaxed. We don't need to do anything about who we are. We're fine with who we are. Self-consciousness is looking for danger and finding what's not good here. The antidote to self-consciousness, to fear, and to obsessive attention to other things comes in the most fascinating subject of all. How we can be powerful. How we can get what we want. How we can live a fulfilled and happy life. That's the stuff we want to be thinking about. And if you believe that that can be true, which by using the core narrative, by using the power column, you can get to, suddenly actually attending to symptoms, no matter how hard they might be, how much suffering there might be, it's actually not nearly as interesting. The antidote to the attentional mind-body issue is deconstruct the distraction in the emotions column, deconstruct the doubt and the visualized physicality in the doubt column, and then use your core narrative to connect to your purpose and your identity. The way I think about it with the columns, I spend the majority of my time living in the power column as much as I can. That's where happiness is. So live in the power column and the attentional symptoms recede just like all the other symptoms. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and I'll get back to you personally.